Hello, friends. Today, I will tell you about the cartoon Hotel Transylvania 2. Like if you like our videos, Johnny and Mavis decided to get married. All sorts of monsters came to the wedding, as well as the groom's relatives. It was a very ordinary family. They felt uncomfortable with so many evil spirits, but they steadfastly endured the ceremony, the banquet, and even the screaming pieces of cake. But it wasn't just Johnny's parents who were uncomfortable at the wedding. Mavis's father, Dracula, tried to stop the newlyweds from sharing their first kiss. He still saw his daughter as a tiny girl and couldn't believe she was getting married. The only thing Mavis regretted that day was the absence of Grandpa Vlad. However, Dracula knew that if his daddy came, he would eat all of Johnny's relatives and the wedding would be ruined. Sometime after the wedding, Mavis invited her father for a walk. As they frolicked in the clouds as bats, Mavis revealed that she was expecting a child. She and Johnny had a beautiful red-haired baby boy, and Dracula was one of the first to see him. He had to dress up as a nurse to get into the delivery room. The son was named Dennis or Dennis. He grew by leaps and bounds, and the grandfather doted on his grandson. However, to his disappointment, Deniska showed no signs of being a vampire. He never got fangs, and he couldn't turn into a bat. Johnny's parents were happy about this because they wanted a normal grandson, someone they wouldn't be ashamed to take to visit. But Dracula wasn't going to let his grandson go into the big world. He wanted Dennis to stay with him at the hotel. To keep Johnny busy, he gave him a simple job. It was necessary to establish connections with the human world. This way, Dracula's hotel will have more visitors. And they really did show up, although they didn't really like it there. Mavis spent all this time raising Deniska. She did everything so that he would get used to the world of people in the future, because if he didn't become a vampire by the age of 5, he could forget about it forever. She showed him programs that human children watch, sang a regular lullaby, and generally prepared him for moving to California, Johnny's homeland. Dracula wanted the vampire genes to awaken in his grandson. He even invited him to the birthday party of the Wolfia puppies, with whom Dennis was friends. Mavis went to meet him and allowed Deniska to attend the party. The first thing he did was rush to play with Vinny. They liked each other and spent a lot of time together. After the party, Dracula tries to figure out how to convince his daughter to stay in Transylvania. Frank gives him an idea. We need to send Johnny and Mavis on vacation. Meanwhile, Deniska will remain in the care of his grandfather, who will try to make the boy awaken his vampire genes. All that is needed is to create a stressful situation for him. Dracula discusses his plan with Johnny, who also does not want to leave Transylvania, and the boy agrees to help him. He will do everything to make Mavis like California, but not so much that she wants to move there. Before leaving, the daughter gave her father recommendations on how to look after Deniska, but Dracula forgot about them immediately. As soon as the car with Johnny and Mavis disappeared around the corner, he gathered his friends, took his grandson, and went to make a vampire out of him. He wanted to show who the real monsters were, because all they did was scare ordinary people. Meanwhile, Mavis and Johnny fly to California. On the way home, Mavis is going to call her father, but Johnny dissuades her. He knows that Dracula is now teaching his grandson bad things. However, Dennis was fast asleep at that moment, while Grandpa's Tarantos was racing along the forest road. Finally, they came to the darkest part of the forest. They used to scare people here, but now they had a pretty decent park there. Dracula sent Frank ahead to show people how afraid they were of monsters. But when he jumped out from behind the bush, the girls were delighted. They even asked to take a photo with Frank. On the way to the next location, Deniska dreamed of a birthday cake and a performance by his favorite TV character, and his grandfather planned to scare the baby to death so that the vampire genes would wake up in him. To this end, he demanded that Wolfich finish off the deer. And when he was already in the mood for hunting, someone threw a frisbee. Wolfich rushed after it, but he had to fight for the flying saucer with a dog. Taking the frisbee, Wolfich got into the car, and they drove on. On the way, Dracula tried to take the plate from him, but because of this, they lost the jelly that was riding next to him. The poor guy fell off the cliff and disappeared. Johnny took Mavis out for some fun. They started by stopping at a convenience store, which Maeve loved. Then they went to a skate park, where Johnny showed off his skills by breaking some kid's bike. Mavis also tried her hand, and it turned out that she was a blast skating. She was happy because Deniska would really like this place and he would be able to make friends with the kids. Meanwhile, Dracula made the mummy send a sandstorm to the surrounding area, the likes of which no mortal had ever seen. Murray overdid it with his spells and pulled at his back, but he still managed to summon some sand. Deniska and Frank molded a sandman out of it. After that, the monsters went to the next location, and then Dracula received a video call from Mavis. Dennis was asleep, and they had to put dark glasses on him so that he looked like a happy little boy. Maeve believed that her father was hanging out with Deniska on the hotel grounds. Dracula took him to the camp where he himself had vacationed as a child. Here, young vampires were trained to be big, scary vampires. It was called Camp Vinnie Pakaka. But when Dracula and the monsters entered, it turned out that the camp had changed. It could now be called Vinnie Pakakal because here the vampires were treated like babies. They were overprotected and protected from any stress. Mavis was fascinated by the place of Johnny's parents. She liked literally everything here, and she wanted to move here with Deniska as soon as possible. However, Johnny's mother spoiled the impression. She invited mixed couples, where one was a human and the other a monster, to the house so that they could tell how they lived in the human world. Mavis was alarmed by this, and when the conversation turned to Dennis's abnormality, she became even more upset. She began to understand that she might not be welcome in this place. Finally, Dracula got tired of all this mushy-mushy with the vampires, and he decided to teach his grandson to fly the way he was taught. He climbed up a very high and shaky tower, and then threw Dennis down. He was sure that the boy would fly, and he did fly, albeit vertically downwards. At the last moment, Dracula turned into a bat and saved Deniska. The kids from the camp filmed it on their phones and posted it online. And while the camp director was threatening to tell Dennis's parents everything, the tower fell and a fire started, engulfing all the buildings. And that wasn't the worst part. Mavis and Johnny saw a video of Deniska and Dracula on the internet. Mavis called her father and yelled at him. She said that she was going home immediately, and if Deniska wasn't there, Dracula would be very sorry. But getting to Transylvania turned out to be difficult. There were no direct flights there. So Maeve turns into a bat, grabs Johnny and his luggage, and flies across the ocean. Dracula is also in a hurry to get home, but his car exploded in a fire, and they had to call Jelly on his Tarantike. He was so fast that they would have gotten there faster on foot. So Frank had to blow up the jelly so that it would release the air and quickly deliver them to the hotel. Despite all of Dracula's tricks, Mavis still arrived early. She took Deniska and said that she would definitely go to California because it was dangerous for Dennis to stay with such a grandfather. Maeve packed her things and was ready to leave, but first she had to celebrate her son's birthday. She invited Dennis, a character from her favorite TV show, to the party. In addition, Johnny's relatives came to Transylvania, and Maeve also invited Vlad's grandfather. Dracula was scared when he heard about him. If his father came, he would eat all the people. So he and Johnny disguised all the boys' relatives to look like monsters. Having received the invitation, Vlad was delighted because another vampire had appeared in the family. He took Bella with him to the party. Just don't confuse her with Bella from Twilight. In this cartoon, Bella is a bloodthirsty ghoul. When Grandpa Mavis arrived, the first thing he did was meet Johnny, who was dressed as Gary Oldman's Dracula. Then he looked at Dennis and realized that he didn't have fangs yet. However, this did not upset Vlad, because his son also could not get fangs for a long time. Despite his outward indifference, Vlad decided to speed up the process. He suggested that Johnny and Dracula scare the boy. All he has to do is take what he loves and turn it into something scary. Then the vampire genes will awaken and Deniska will grow fangs. At that moment, Keksik's performance began. Vlad started to turn him into a monster, and Dennis got scared, but he didn't become a vampire. He rushed to Dracula and hugged him. Drax stopped the show and told Vlad that he couldn't torture the kid like that, and that he loved him like that. Mavis realized that her father and grandfather had arranged this to make Dennis a vampire. They began to quarrel, and while they were arguing, Dennis went into the forest. During the squabble between the spouses, Vlad learned that Johnny was a human. Bella also saw this and chased after Dennis to deal with him. Meanwhile, Dracula stood up for Johnny and his family before his father, but they did not have time to sort things out. They noticed that Deniska had escaped and went to look for him. In the forest, Dennis met Vinny. The two of them went to a treehouse to chat. Bella flew to them and tried to take them hostage. He wanted to destroy Dracula's hotel since it treated people well. To stop him, Winnie bit his hand, and Bella threw her aside. Seeing his friends hurt, Dennis awakened his inner vampire and turned into a bat. In this form, he punched the monster in the face. Bella called his brothers, but Deniska also had help. His parents and all the guests came running to him. They fought the ghouls and defeated them. But Bella didn't give up so easily. He grabbed a stake and tried to stab Johnny with it. Vlad stopped him by turning the ghoul into a tiny bat. Vlad changed his attitude towards people and Dracula. He finally understood his son and decided not to pester him with his advice. And Johnny and Mavis decided to stay in Transylvania because their son really likes it here and has many friends. Then they all went to the hotel to continue celebrating Dennis's birthday. Here, monsters and people threw a grand party, where even Vlad and Dracula had a blast like old men.